Om yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo ve vedanscha prahinoti tasmai tam hadevam atma buddhi prakasham mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye. We who seek liberation take refuge in that luminous being who has projected this universe, who has projected the Creator himself, who has breathed out the sacred lore of the Vedas, and who illumines the hearts of all beings. Om Shanti, 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So good morning. This morning, the work is yours, because this is a question and answers, and so there's nothing for me to prepare. So that's right, just a moment, I forgot. We need the microphone so that it's picked up.
Yes, Maharaj, I would like to know about Prabhu Maharaj, Swami Vireshananda.
Okay, stories about Swami Vireshwaranand Maharaj. Yes, certainly. I'll speak some about him. And in the meantime, you can think of other questions. Well, first I'll take this one, and then I'll get you. Yes, and then okay. So Swami Vireshwaranandaji, he was my guru. Those of you who don't know of him, he was a disciple of the Holy Mother. And he was born in western Karnataka, near Mangalore, with an M. I've been to his home, his ancestral home. He passed away, attained Mahasamadhi in 1985. I think it was around March or April 1985. I believe it was March. And he was in his mid-90s at that time. He was lived quite a long life. He was very short, not quite 5 feet high, and extremely thin. I don't think he ever attained to 100 pounds in weight. So he was very short, very thin, and yet there was a great power about him. He became the president of the order, and one felt around him a great spiritual power. He was an extraordinary man, being so small in stature, and yet he filled a room with his presence. And wherever he was the center of people's attention because of that spiritual power that he had about him. There were many things that were special about him. He had a great intellect. He authored a number of books, mainly translations. And he had, as a follower of Sri Ramakrishna and the Holy Mother, he had an expansive interest in the commentary on the Brahma Sutra by Shankaracharya, or he didn't translate it, he summarized it. If you read the whole commentary in English of Shankaracharya on the Brahma Sutras, it's almost incomprehensible because much of the commentary is explaining the Sanskrit words in Sanskrit grammatical terms. And so that doesn't translate into English. So what he did was he translated the ideas, reconstructed the ideas, rather than giving a grammatical commentary on the Sanskrit words, which again does little for understanding in English. And he also did the same for Ramanuja's commentary on the Brahma Sutras. And then he translated Sridhara's commentary on the Gita, which is one of the most beautiful and simplest commentaries on the Gita. Simplest, not that it's lightweight in ideas, but it goes right to the heart. In Shankaracharya's commentary on the Gita, he was establishing the Advaita Vedanta philosophy. And so he's arguing that here Sri Krishna is saying this, which supports the Advaita philosophy, and not the other philosophies of India or the other philosophies of Vedanta also. And so there are many arguments which are supporting the Advaita philosophy. But in Sridhara's commentary, it just goes straight to the meaning of the Gita verse. And it's a beautiful harmony between the Advaitic position of knowledge, jnana, and the tradition of bhakti, devotion. And so, again, he was a great intellect, and yet a man of great simplicity. He served as a variety of positions within the order, but he was quite early made a trustee of the order, and eventually he became general secretary after Swami Madhavananda. And then after Swami Madhavananda, who became president, passed away, then he became the president of the order. In fact, in 1965, after Swami Madhavananda had passed away, first Swami Dayananda was asked to become president. Swami Dayananda was the brother of Swami Madhavananda and was the founder head of Seva Pratishthan, which used to be known as Shishu Mangal. Swami Dayananda had come to America in San Francisco and spent 2 years there before returning to India. And in America, he was very impressed with the maternal care in hospitals for new mothers. And so he wanted to introduce that state-of-the-art maternal care in India. So he came back and founded a maternity hospital in Calcutta, which was known as Shishu Mangal for a long time. And eventually it became a huge general hospital with a nursing school and research wings and all of that. It still exists. Now it's called Seva Pratishthan. But common people, even when I lived in India in the 70s, long after it had become a general hospital, common people still referred to it as Shishu Mangal. And the bus drivers would still say that the next stop is Shishu Mangal. So Swami Dayananda had been asked to become president, but he said, no, I want to follow my brother, because that would be nepotism, and that we shouldn't have in the order. There shouldn't be a reign of brothers or family members, and so he refused to become president. Then they approached Swami Yatishwaranandaji, who was a great Swami, a great yogi, a very saintly man. And Swami Yatishwaranandaji said that no, I feel that the Guru Shakti, the power of the Guru that came to me from Swami Brahmananda, his Guru, Swami Brahmananda, he said that I feel that Swami Brahmananda has withdrawn the Guru Shakti, and so I want to become president. And indeed, within a few months after that, he passed away. So then they turned to Swami Vireshwarananda. So that sounds anticlimactic, because it sounds like, well, they couldn't get anybody else, so might as well push this man forward. But no, these other two were asked first, and they were not willing to become, and said definitely they would not. Swami Vireshwanandaji was, again, very simple, and he liked the position of General Secretary, where he was a very effective General Secretary. So they asked him to become president, and he said no. I don't want to be president, I will continue as I am. And so they pressed him, and finally they forced him. They said, they got the seniors together, seniors to him. He was very senior already, of course, but seniors to him, like Bharat Maharaj, Abhayanandaji, and others, to say, you have no choice, you have to become the next president. So he did, and he became the longest, until now, the longest serving president, except for Swami Brahmananda, who was president for 22 or 23 years, and Swami Vireshwanandaji was president for 20 years. Other presidents, 10 years is a long time for president. 2, 3, 4 years is more typical, but he was president for 20 years, and a great man. Whenever I would go to see him, as I've said before, I felt that I wasn't seeing flesh and blood. I wasn't seeing a physical body. That was a very strange. It's not something I can explain, or it's not something that a good artist could draw. It was just that he looked like embodied spirituality. This small man sitting in his chair, and often he was very active, not hyperactive, but very active, very dynamic, And so sitting in his chair, oftentimes he'd be strumming his fingers like that, waiting for the pranam to be over. And his attendants, whom I was friends with, told me that when he was in his upper 80s, that he exhausted all of them, and he was so dynamic and had so much energy that the attendants couldn't keep up with him. He would come back from a long trip and immediately want to get to work. And so some of the special features of his work, one was, of course, behind his work was tremendous dedication, tremendous devotion. Just to hear him speak of Guru Maharaj, that's the way he referred to Sri Ramakrishna, the king of gurus, because in our order, Sri Ramakrishna is considered to be the real guru. You take initiation from a human guru, but the human guru is only a channel for Sri Ramakrishna. It's considered that Sri Ramakrishna is the guru of all of us. And so we all have the same guru. Whether we take initiation from a human guru that may be different from someone else's human guru, but all the power comes from Sri Ramakrishna. And Swami Vireshwaranji always insisted on that Sri Ramakrishna is the guru. But behind his work was this tremendous devotion to the one he called Guru Maharaj. That was the people call Sri Ramakrishna, sometimes Sri Ramakrishna, sometimes they call him Thakur, other master and other names, but his favorite term for Sri Ramakrishna was Guru Maharaj. And so behind all of his tremendous work, accomplished a great deal, was this devotion to Sri Ramakrishna. And just to hear him say Guru Maharaj would bring out devotion in others. To hear him, the way that he said it, would inspire devotion in you for Sri Ramakrishna. And so in his work, he had great love for the poor. And so it was under him that Palli Mangal work was started. Palli Mangal, the development of villages. And of course the villages were very undeveloped, very poor. And so he insisted we must do something for the poor. And so he began it was he who started the work, when he was president, started the work of the Palli Mangal. Swami Atmarupananda, whom some of you knew, who was recently president, until he passed away quite recently. He was the first one put in charge of Palli Mangal, but it was under Swami Vireshwaranji's instruction and his inspiration that it was started. He also had great love for the tribals, and so he would go to Meghalaya and to Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh and other places where we have tribal work. And he would always inspire people to go out and work for the welfare of the tribals. And one of the specialties of our work with the tribals, which he always insisted on, was that we're not out to change their culture. That Christian missionaries and others who go in to work with the tribals, the first thing they do is to turn them into Christians and then to change their culture and insist that their dress, their food, everything else become Christianized. But in our work, he said that we're not there to change them. We're not there to make them like us. We're there to bring them education, to bring them the benefits of the modern world and let them use it in their own way. And so he was behind the great growth. We already had tribal work, but he was behind the great growth in tribal work. During his time, it greatly increased and received a value in the order's work that it had not had before. So his work for the poor, his work for the tribals, and his work for women. He was very interested in the uplift of women. And so in the Palli Mangal, one of the features of Palli Mangal work, the village development work that he insisted on, was that we provide women in the villages means of independent means of support. Because of the spread of alcohol and drugs in the villages, many women who had husbands who were abusers of alcohol and drugs and couldn't work, and then the women were left with nothing. And so he said, we must give the women independent means of livelihood, to train them in home industries and things that they can do in order to make a living. And so that was one of the features that he insisted on, the development of the women's work for poor women to give them a means of livelihood. So he was extremely important in the development of the work of the order. And one of the special characteristics of him, again, was when he finally had no option but to accept the insistence that he be president, he said, I want to continue administrative work also. Because again, he loved the work of the general assistant secretary and then later general secretary. So usually the president doesn't take part in administrative affairs. There's the general secretary who's the administrative head, and the president is the spiritual head. And the president is removed from administrative affairs. But Swami Vireshwaranand continued with a strong leadership role in the administration of the order. So he carried on these two sides. There was, of course, always a general secretary, but he carried on a strong influence in the administrative work of the order as well. So his scholarly side, his devotional side, which was very, very strong, his work side, the karma yoga side, he had a very, very well-rounded personality, and always insisted on that in others, and always insisted on the monks doing their work with great dedication as a spiritual practice. He over and over again would insist that we don't do, in the Ramakrishna mission, we don't do social service. We do spiritual practice. We worship God in humanity. Ours is not social service. We worship God in man, and if that looks like social service to others, that's fine, because our worship is to help others, to awaken the divinity within others. And if that looks like social service, fine, but it's really our spiritual practice. And so he was very firm in insisting on that. This is not just do-goodism. Not that he had something against doing good. No, he would have supported that wherever he found it. But ours is not do-goodism. Ours is spiritual practice. And he used to say that for thousands of years, the people of India, the population of India, the general population had supported the monks. And he said, now it's our turn to give something back to society. For thousands of years, the monks were free to just live their life of meditation and scriptural study, and they were supplied food and other things by the householders. He said, now the country is in a bad state, and it's and of course he would say by extension, not just the country, but the world. So now it's our turn to give something back to society, that we must work for the welfare of society now. And, but again, as spiritual practice. He also had deep spiritual insight. There are many, many stories. Some of you may have seen, there's a two-volume work of reminiscences of Swami Vireshwaranand, published in Bengali, Hindi, and English, all three, the same reminiscences in all three languages. And there you'll find many, many instances of his great spiritual insight and great spiritual wisdom. There's stories like, many, many stories like this. One story was that a woman and her husband, the woman had wanted initiation for a long time, and the husband didn't want it. He said, no, I'm not interested in that. And finally, she asked her husband, will you at least let me take initiation? And so the husband grudgingly allowed her to take it. He had said that don't get initiation until I'm ready, but I don't want it, and so I'm not ready. And so finally, when she prevailed on him to allow her to take initiation, then she went and arranged to get initiation from Swami Vireshwarananda, the president of the order. And so on the day of initiation, she came, and her husband came with her just to accompany her, but he went to the temple and was standing in the temple just sort of feeling bad that, well, now my wife is getting initiation, and I've been so stubborn that why was I so stubborn? She's getting a good thing. It's a good thing. And now, because I was so stubborn and so proud that I wouldn't allow myself to get initiation, and so feeling miserable. So when everybody was in the hall, for those who were getting initiation, they were all present for initiation. Then Swami Vireshwarananda told one of his attendants that no, someone is missing from the hall. You go to the temple, and in such and such a place, you'll find a man standing there who looks like this. You call him. So the attendant went and found this man standing there and said, Swami Vireshwaranji is calling you. So the man was shocked, because of course he had not even gone to see President Maharaj. He had never met him or anything. And so he was brought, and Swami Vireshwaranji said, you also sit, I'll give you initiation too. And so the man took initiation and was delighted at the way that things had turned out. So there are many things that happened like that. Another time, Swami Vireshwaranji was giving initiation to a group, and he had asked everyone beforehand if they had received initiation before, and everyone said no, that we have not received initiation. So when he came in to give initiation, he said, someone here has already been initiated. And everybody just kept quiet. I can't go forward until the person who has already been initiated identifies himself. I want no one will get initiation, so someone please identify themselves. So finally some woman very reluctantly with the tears in her eyes said, Maharaj, I got initiation from some outside person long ago, but I wanted initiation from you, and so I didn't say anything because I was afraid it would prevent me from getting initiation. So Vireshwaranji said, well, it's not for you today. You talk to me later. And so he went ahead and gave initiation to the others. Again, nobody knew except for that woman herself. She hadn't told anybody, but Swami Vireshwaranji knew that someone in the audience or someone in the group of initiates had already received initiation. So I'm not sure what happened. I don't remember what happened afterwards, whether he talked to her and told her what to do and then gave her initiation later or what. But at that time, he wouldn't give initiation. And so again, there are many stories like that. I had a very good friend who passed away while I was in India this last time, about two years ago he passed away. He was a Muslim from Maharashtra. And when he was a young college student, he became very interested in Sri Ramakrishna. His father also became interested in Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, I'll tell a story about his father first because it's very interesting. It has nothing to do with Swami Vireshwaranji, though the father also met Swami Vireshwaranji later. The father, when my friend, this young man, college man, a Muslim man from Kolhapur, began reading about Sri Ramakrishna and going to the Mumbai ashram and so forth. The father also got interested, and so he started reading the gospel. And this had been going on for some time. He had come to know a good bit about Sri Ramakrishna. And one day, while he was reading the gospel, he sat back in his chair and fell asleep, the father. And then when he woke up, he told my friend, he said, that now I know that Sri Ramakrishna is God. Now I know that he is God himself. Because only in my dream I saw that I was dancing with Sri Ramakrishna, and only God could make a big fat man like me dance. My friend, he would go sometimes to the Bombay ashram, as I said. And when he would go to the Bombay ashram, he wouldn't do his regular meditation because he was traveling and everything, and the inconvenience and everything. He'd already taken initiation from Swami Vireshwaranji. So while he had gone to Mumbai, my friend's sister slept in his bed while he was gone. And sleeping in his bed, one day she had a dream in which Swami Vireshwaranji came to her and said, the instructions I gave you in initiation that you're supposed to do every day, whether you're traveling or not. And so then the sister told her brother, when he came back, told her what had happened, that Swami Vireshwaranji had appeared to her, who was sleeping in his bed, and given instructions for the brother. And I met people. I met a woman in Amritsar. No, it was near Amritsar, some town in Punjab near Amritsar, who was a disciple of Swami Vireshwaranji. She she had received initiation and was repeating the mantra. And then she got word from Swami Vireshwaranji that, no, you're not reciting the mantra properly. It should be recited like this. And so she did her japa silently. She didn't say her mantra out loud. Nobody had heard her say her mantra. But Swami Vireshwaranji sent word that, no, the mantra is to be recited like this. And so he's a man of great spiritual insight, tremendous in work, tremendous in devotion, tremendous in spiritual insight, tremendous in knowledge. So again, a man of great, all-rounded wisdom. And just one more thing I'll say, and then see if there are other questions. When I was in training center from 1975 to 77, and probably it was in 1975 or 6, Swami Vireshwaranji was the president and would always come to the training center for the valedictory service when the graduating brahmacharyas are being graduated. So he would come and give a talk. So one year, either 75 or 76, he said that, which I have always remembered, that always remember that Belar Math is your home, that you will be sent out to centers around India, and eventually some of you may be sent to foreign countries as well. But remember that Belar Math is always your home. You're assigned to other centers, but this is your home. And if you have any trouble, serious trouble, then you can always come back to Belar Math. This is always your refuge. You will always be welcome here, and this will always be your home. And so that made a very deep impression on me. And the next year, when he gave the valedictory talk, this year he said that those of you who cannot adjust to the ideals of this order, those of you who do not agree with the ideals of the order, those of you who are not willing to do the work of the order and so forth, then it's better that you get out. Get out from the order. It'll be better for you, and it'll be better for us also to be rid of you. That you only become disgruntled, and then you make others disgruntled, and you complain about everything. And so if that's the way that you're going to live, then better that you get out now. And so I saw the contrast between these two. The one time when he was just like the loving mother, and the next year in the same venue, he was like the father, saying that if you don't like it here, then you get out and save us from suffering and save yourself from suffering also. We'll be happy, and you'll be happy also for you to go. So both were true, and both were true to his spirit, that he wanted people who were dedicated, people who were in tune with the ideals. Of course, he knew that there's a variety of human natures, and people who come to join the order, they're not saints. That's not why you come to join the order. You come because you want to realize God, not because you have realized God and become perfected in all of the moral virtues. But at the same time, he saw that how people who are not in tune with the ideals of the order, who become complainers and critics of everything and everybody, and who are always working at cross purposes to the order, how that had done harm to the order. And so he could be both the loving mother as well as the stern father when he felt that he needed to be. But usually he was the loving mother. He was a disciple of Holy Mother, had spent his life, of course, thinking and remembering Holy Mother, and that had given him a mother's heart. So I'll stop there and see the next question. Okay, next one was here. There. Yeah.
Swamiji, by any chance, do you remember the birthplace near Mangalore?
Yes, it was Gurupur.
Gurupur.
Yes, it's just a short drive from Mangalore.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. My question to you is, what is the spiritual explanation that we do things which we don't want to do?
A good question. That's asked by Arjuna in the Gita, in the 3rd chapter of the Gita. Let's see. He says, Atakena prayukto yam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya balarya ivaniyojitaha. Atakena prayukto yam, controlled by what, O Varshneya, O Krishna? Do people commit sins here? Anichannapi varshneya, even when they don't want to, as if they are forced into it. So the question is the same as yours. Why is it that people are forced into, as it were, forced into doing things that they know they shouldn't do? And so, of course, he obviously meant not forced by someone else, but forced by something inside of them. What is it that forces a person to do that which they know they shouldn't do? And so then Sri Krishna says in the next verse, it's towards the end of the 3rd chapter, Kama esha, Krodha esha, this is from desire and from anger. It's that which forces a person to do that which they don't want to do. So going behind, that's the simple answer, going behind it to understand the depth of Sri Krishna's answer. Desire means that we have vasanas, we have deep-seated desires within us that push us to do things that we don't want to do. When we come to spiritual life, or even if we're not interested in spiritual life, but just want to be dharmic, want to lead a good life, a righteous life, then the conscious mind wants to adhere to certain principles, certain moral principles. The problem is that we have lifetimes of doing contrary things, and those lifetimes of contrary things push us to go with things that the conscious mind doesn't want to do. So one of the long-term problems in spiritual life, and one of the things spiritual practice is meant to overcome, is to the weight of the what in modern psychology is called the unconscious mind, or what in Indian psychology were called the vasanas, which are part of the samskaras, the motivational part, the part of samskaras which are filled with power. When we do an action, there are 2 effects in the mind. One is the memory of the action. So take a simple innocent action, like eating ice cream, like going down to Sugarland to Quality Ice Cream and buying pan masala ice cream, which is my personal favorite. And so you eat it and it tastes good. So you have the memory of the taste and of the look of the ice cream, the taste of the ice cream. And you also have the associated emotions. That is, you think, oh, this really tastes good. So those are 2 different things, 2 different parts to the memory. The mental picture that you have, the memory which is like a picture, that's completely innocent. But tied to that is, wow, this really tastes good, I want to get some more. The desire to go get more pan masala ice cream. And again, I'm using an innocent example. There are many things which are not so innocent, but this is an innocent, and there's nothing wrong with wanting more ice cream unless it becomes an obsession. But the two are distinct. And so when we remember the pan masala ice cream, it's tied to this, wow, that was really good. And so then that part of the memory is the vasana, that which drives you to go get more pan masala ice cream. So in all of our memories, in all of our samskaras, there are these 2 categories. Just the picture memory, and I don't mean just visual, but all of the senses involved in the memory, just like a photograph in the memory. But then there's the vasana, which says, I want to do this again. Or the vasana, which says, I never want to do this again. So we have memories which we want to repeat, and memories that we hate. Memories of attraction and memories of repulsion, and memories of fear. Those are the 3 basic emotions: attraction, repulsion, and fear. Desire for, hatred towards, and fear of, running away from. So in all of these memories in the mind, there are these 3. Something that has become very deep that vasana becomes very strong, and it prompts us to do more action. And so some of those are just part of our biological nature. Some of the urges that we feel are just because we're embodied in a physical body. And even a saint will feel those, like the hunger and thirst, the desire for minimal comfort, etc. To get out of the hot sun, to get out of the rain, etc. Those are part of our biological nature, and those are common to everyone, saint, sinner, and everybody else in between. So those are not the problem. But the problem comes where we have, from past lives, and also perhaps from this life, we have strong desires to do things which are contrary to dharma. For instance, the desire to steal, to take something which is not mine. The desire for someone else's wife, and so forth. These desires which urge us to do things which are adharmic. And the things I mentioned, of course, those are big things. Stealing and taking someone else's wife and things like that. Those most of us here are not going to do, though sometimes the impulse comes, but the big, some of the terrible things we can control easily because we've become good enough so that those don't bother us. But then there are other things that do bother us. And so part of spiritual life is working on purifying the unconscious mind long enough, doing that process of purification long enough so that the unconscious mind itself begins to want what the conscious mind has decided it wants. Conscious mind has decided, I want to lead a spiritual life. Or for an ordinary person who's not interested in realizing God or something, I just want to lead a dharmic life. You know, they're the 4 purusharthas, the 4 aims of human life according to Hinduism. The kama, artha, dharma, moksha. And often it's said dharma, kama, artha, moksha. But kama, sense desire, the fulfillment of sense desire. Everybody has that. And again, common to saint and sinner alike is the desire to have food, to have a drink and so forth, to have shelter and all of that. And then beyond that, to have really good food and really good drink and really a beautiful palace to live in and all of that. That's going beyond just the biological urge. So the desire for sense enjoyment. And then artha, the desire for possession. That's considered to be legitimate. The desire for possession is legitimate. It's something that's there in human nature. It's there in animal nature. If anyone has ever had a pet like a dog, you'll find that the dog has a very strong sense of property. And if you give it a toy, that's its toy. That the toy belongs to it. So that in human nature also, there are things that we want for our own possession. Whether it's for an austere person, something simple like a copy of the Gita that they want, or whether it's vast property and a beautiful house and beautiful cars and all of those things. So those are considered legitimate desires as long as they don't contravene dharma. So dharma is considered also a purushartha. Why? Everybody wants to be thought of as a good person, a righteous person. If someone commits something horrible, like murders another person, what do? The person who has already murdered somebody. They immediately start justifying it. Well, there's a reason why I murdered them. They needed to be murdered. They were bad, they were in my way, they were causing problems, and so immediately, why do they justify it? We know that murder is wrong. But why do they justify the murder? Because they want to be thought of as a good and reasonable person. That shows that everybody wants, that dharma is a purushartha. It's something that everybody wants. Everybody wants legitimate sense desire fulfilled. Everybody wants to possess in a legitimate way. And, everybody wants sense fulfillment and possession, whether it's legitimate or not. But everybody also wants to be thought of as a righteous person. And so the thief, the murderer, everybody wants to justify what they did because they want to be dharmic, even if they're doing very undharmic actions. And so that shows that we have a desire to be dharmic. And so in spiritual life or in the life of dharma, what makes us do undharmic things and unspiritual things is again the unconscious mind, where the conscious mind has decided I want to go in this direction, which is the good direction, the chosen direction, the higher direction. But the unconscious mind wants to go that way or even then the opposite direction. And so every time we think of God, every time we recite the mantra, every time we do bhajan consciously, every time we do an act of worship, every time we help someone who needs help, we are purifying the unconscious mind and making the unconscious mind closer and closer to accepting our conscious decision. And so deciding that I want to lead a spiritual life, deciding I want to lead a dharmic life, that's not enough. That's the first step. But then we have to do tapasya of some sort. And tapasya doesn't mean standing in an ice-cold river and doing japa for 8 hours while you're freezing cold. No, it doesn't mean that. Tapasya means concentrating the mind. It means purifying the mind. And so we have to do tapasya, we have to do practice, we have to do sadhana. Sadhana means tapasya, means spiritual practice. And so in that way, gradually the unconscious mind is remolded. Swami Prabhupada used to give the example. In the old days in India, and it used to be here also much earlier, in Swami Prabhupadanda's childhood, they had in India, they had school kids had a slate with an inkwell attached to the slate. And so they'd sit on the ground and write on the slate on a paper with a quill pen, dip it in the ink and write. And so he said that occasionally the inkwell had to be cleaned out because the ink would begin to dry and everything, so it had to be dry. So how to wash it? It's permanently fixed to the slate. So you put the whole thing, slate and bottle itself, under a tap, and you turn on the tap and let it pour into the bottle. So what happens when you do that? All the gunk comes out of the bottle. So he would say that when you begin to practice meditation, when you begin to practice spiritual discipline, all the dirt in the mind is loosened and it becomes free-flowing. And so it often seems when you begin to take up a religious life or a dharmic life, you begin to feel that, gee, I'm worse than I was before. You know, now all of these thoughts that are coming to me, these horrible thoughts, my God, you know, I never knew that I could think such terrible things. Well, that's because something good is happening. All the dirt that is in the mind, the sediment in the mind is being loosened. And that has to happen first before it can be washed out. And the washing out takes, for most of us, it takes many, many years, many, many years. And so that we have to be very patient. And what helps is to know that this is just a dried ink. It was always there. It's not something new that spiritual practice is making me a worse person. No, it's loosening up all of this stuff. And so I just have to be patient and let this happen and not get involved with it. The problem is that it washes up the loose ink, and the mind says, oh, that's an interesting thing, let me hold on to that, and it goes and follows the dirt. But no, just let it wash out. Let it come and let it go. Don't be attached to it. And so in time, the mind will become clean and the mind will become amenable to a new direction. Let me say one last thing about this, because it's a beautiful thing that I learned from Swami Bhavyanandaji, who used to be head of the center in England. Before that, he was head of Shillong and did other work in the order. He had learned something from his Scottish school teacher back in the days of the British Raj. He said his Scottish school teacher had taught the boys, he was from Mysore, and taught the boys in the school he went to. He would write up on the board the word habit. And so he would say, be very careful of habits. Once they are formed, they are extremely difficult to change. And so be very careful what habits you form. Do you want to know how difficult they are to get rid of? And he would, after writing up in chalk the word habit, he would take the eraser and erase the H. He said, you try to get rid of it, but you're left with a bit. You take away the A, you're left with bit. You take away the B, you're left with it. So you'd say be very careful of forming your habits, because once they're formed, they're very difficult to get rid of. But a habit can be gotten rid of. Our whole life is nothing but habit. Why do I see you seated here and others seated here? It's only because of habit. If it weren't because of habit, I would see nothing but God. It's because I have the habit of seeing people instead of God. I have the habit of seeing that which appears to be matter rather than the luminous being of God, that I see the world the way that I see it. That's only habit. And so if habit can be made, habit can be undone. But the intent of that teacher's example, which Swami Bhavyananda told me, is to show that habit is persistent. And so you can work and work to get rid of it, but the seeds of it remain for a long time. And so we have to be ready in spiritual life to work on our habits. It's a lifetime's work. And everything that we do, we are improving. So we just have to stay with it. So now, next question was here. And
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Very important. And you know, in daily lives, people say, I'm sorry I did this. And it will hurt you, and they will then try to pull you down. I mean, some of the things you've been talking about, these habits. In the context of Vedanta, how do you deal with it? And what is the exit strategy?
Yes, that's a good question about forgiveness. Because forgiveness is something all of us have to learn. And let me say that each religious tradition has sort of specialized in certain areas. And so if you go to Christianity, there you'll hear about forgiveness a great deal. And that's the sort of a tradition which was founded on the idea of forgiveness. So it's there in Hinduism as well. It's important for any tradition. It's there in Buddhism, in Islam, Judaism, etc. Christianity sort of has made a thing of forgiveness, just as each tradition specializes in certain areas. So again, forgiveness is extraordinarily important. Why? Because the world is not fair. Now, the law of karma says that ultimately the world is fair because we get the experiences that we deserve because of our long line of past lives. The accumulated karma from many lifetimes brings us the experiences that we need. But we don't see our past lives. We know this life. And even in this life, we've forgotten many inconvenient things. And so when things happen to us, we see that from the perspective of this life, life is not fair. You see good people suffering. You see evil people prospering. And so from the standpoint of this life, life is not fair. So just taking this life, forgetting about karma and rebirth and everything, we'll come back to that in a moment. But just taking this life, we have to learn that not to expect fairness from life, again, in terms of this single life. And just to realize that good things happen, bad things happen, that if I'm going to lead a life of mental peace and harmony, I have to learn to forgive. I have to learn to forgive. So, first of all, there are other reasons for forgiving. There are theological reasons for forgiving, philosophical reasons for forgiving. But at purely a practical level, where you don't have to believe in any philosophy, you don't have to believe in any theology or anything like that, purely from a practical level, we have to learn to forgive. Because otherwise we find that life is unbearable. Life is unbearable. If we're expecting people to behave in a certain way towards us, if we're expecting people to reciprocate my actions and so forth, I'm going to be disappointed. If I help somebody, oftentimes you find you help somebody, and then you find that the person not only doesn't appreciate it, but they become upset with you, or then they move to hurt you. There's a famous incident of Vidyasagar, the great Bengali philanthropist and educator, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. He helped many people. He spent his life, he had come from extremely poor background, where he had to study using a street lamp because they had no light at home. Had to use a street lamp in order to read. And he became a great scholar in Sanskrit, in Bengali, in English, started schools, became very wealthy, helped many, many people. Late in his life, he heard that somebody had been criticizing him publicly. And so he asked, why? Why should he be trying to hurt me? I never helped him. Why should he try to hurt me? Meaning that everybody he had tried to help, or many people who he tried to help, had turned against him. And so he said, this person I never tried to help, why should he turn against me? So from a purely practical standpoint, we have to learn forbearance and not to expect justice towards us. I smile at someone and expect them to smile back, and I see they get angry at me for smiling at them. You say something nice to somebody and they say something nasty back. So learning to take responsibility for my own actions and learning that I can't take responsibility for the actions and reactions of others. That's their business. Someone cuts me off on the freeway, my tendency is to get angry and then to cut them off or to roll down my window and shout at them or something. It doesn't affect the other person. It doesn't solve the situation. So just realize, okay, that's that person's problem. They've done something. I recognize that's not something that you should do, so I'm not going to do it. But I can't control his doing of it. And so he did it, so let him go. I'm going to take responsibility for my own actions and not for somebody else's actions. Because I can't take responsibility for someone else's actions because I can't control other people. There's a saying both in the Hindu tradition and in the Buddhist tradition, in their different ways, that to walk on the paths of the world where there are many thorns, you could pave the whole world so that everything is just a smooth asphalt where there are no thorns, but you're not going to be able to pave the whole world. The world is too big. So all I have to do is to wear sandals on my feet, and then I can walk anywhere. I can walk on the thorns of the world and they won't hurt me, just by putting leather on the soles of my feet. So let me do that. Let me take control of myself and not worry about the reactions of others. Well, now let me bring in come back to the idea of karma and rebirth. If you have an understanding of karma and rebirth and understand and have begun to see them work in your own life. I'm not saying you'll believe in a theory because some Swami said you should believe in it or some holy book said you should believe in it, no. But if you begin to see the workings of karma in your own life, and if you examine your own life, you can gradually begin to see that karma is really functioning in my own life. Then I get conviction that karma is working not just from this life, but from previous lives as well. Once I begin to see that a little bit, if I begin to see some strands of karmic action, that's all I need, is to see enough of it working so that I get faith that it's working pervasively. Then the things that happen to me in life, I begin to feel that yes, the things that happen to me in life are things that I have myself set up, that the world is bringing back to me experiences that I myself laid the seeds for. Now that doesn't mean just being a victim of karma. Well, it's my karma, so what can I do? I just have to sit here and suffer. No, it doesn't mean that. It means that every experience that I get in life, it's meant for me. It's meant to teach me something. If I get bad things as a result of bad karma, good things as a result of good karma, it's easy to think that karma is just about reward and punishment. And reward and punishment is the least meaningful part of karma. The real meaning of reward and punishment even, and the real meaning of karma is that every experience that comes to me is teaching me something. And so let me just bear with the experiences of life. Some good experiences will come, and some bad experiences will come. Welcome the good experiences, welcome the bad experiences. Not as a victim, and not as a doormat, making yourself a doormat and let the world walk all over me. No, that's not the idea of karma. The idea of karma is that everything that comes to me has a message for me. And I myself planted the seeds, and now the seeds have grown, and now it's coming to tell me something. So let me just bear with the experiences that come, good and bad, and let me take a creative, interactive approach to karma. Not that karma is just suffering because I did bad things, and so now I have to suffer and I can't do anything about it. No. Sometimes the message of karma is there's things that experiences that come that are repeated, to learn to say no, stop. No, I've had enough. I've seen this enough times. I don't need this again. And say if you continually get into a situation where you are abused by a boss. Once there was a brahmachari when I joined in Chicago and was sent to Ganges town, Ganges monastery in Michigan. A brahmachari who was there for about a year after I had joined, and then he left and he got married. One of the reasons he left was that there was a monk at Ganges, one of the senior brahmachari in Ganges, who he couldn't get along with at all. The senior brahmachari was very bossy and very aggressive and everything. So this man, who was very mild-mannered, he found that he just couldn't bear this older brahmachari, and so he left. He told me a couple of years later when I saw him, he said, after I left because of brahmachari so-and-so, he made my life miserable. What I found after I left was the woman I married was just like him. And my boss, I got a job and the boss was just like him also. So now I had a double dose. And so he learned that what he had to do was to learn how to deal with this type of personality. So not just to be a victim and say, oh, what can I do? It's my karma. I've just got to, I'm a victim. I've got to be a doormat and learn how to be a doormat. No, he learned, no, I have to learn how to deal with this sort of person. And so karma is not is not a doctrine of victimhood. It's a doctrine that says that every experience that comes to you, there's something for you to learn. And so sometimes the thing to learn is just, okay, it's a bad situation. I just have to learn how to keep my mind, even in the midst of difficulties, to keep my mind even. And I just have to suffer through this. There's nothing else I can do, nothing I can see to do. Sometimes it's to learn that, okay, no, I don't have to suffer like this. I have to learn how to confront this sort of situation creatively, to see my way through it. I don't have to keep repeating this. I don't have to keep repeating this victimhood and everything. So, once you have this faith in the law of karma, then you find that forgiveness is much easier, because you realize that, no, maybe in my somebody in my life has been very bad to me, but there's a reason why I had to go through this experience. There's something that I had to learn here. So let me take ownership of the experiences that come to me, and not just to be a victim, a silent victim, and where it's incomprehensible. I'm such a good person, and yet the world is not good enough for me. I'm such a good person, but I have to suffer. No. If we were too good for the world, we wouldn't be in the world. We're in the world of good and bad, receiving good and bad experiences, because it's my nature. And so the good and bad that comes to me are experiences that I need. One other thing, let me say, time is up now, so one other thing to say about this is that you find that in life, problems are necessary. We always think in life that, oh, if I could just get rid of this problem that's in front of me, then life will be free sailing. So we work out that problem, and we find as soon as we work it out that two more problems are coming around the bend of life towards us. And we work that out and think that, oh God, when I can get through with this, then life will be easy sailing. And then when I get able finally to retire, then I'll be finished with all the problems of work, and then the life will be free sailing. No, life is problem solving. The proof of that is that extremely wealthy people who have no money problems, and the type of wealthy person who uses their wealth in order to get rid of problems. They have fixers and others to get rid of all of their problems for them so that they don't have to confront their problems. They pay money to people to keep problems out of their sight. Suddenly, I've seen this actually in actual people, very wealthy people. They start finding that the tiny little things which are not a problem to anybody else, those become huge problems to them. And if they can't find a tiny thing to make a big problem out of, they start imagining problems. That shows that we need problems. It's through solving problems and working through problems that we grow. And so for that reason also we need to learn forgiveness. That the person who has wronged me, the person who has done something to me, they are only an instrument of karma, only an instrument of my karma that has brought this to me. So let me take, if I make other people the dispensers of my happiness and misery, then I'm a slave. You are responsible for my happiness and misery. You can make me happy, you can make me miserable. No, then I'm a slave to you. If I say that no, my experiences have come because of past karma, then I'm the master of my karma. So let me bear with it and learn how to do better. Learn from my experiences and do better. And then I can learn true forgiveness because I realize that no, this person is just the bearer of my own karma. It may seem that they are the agent of my misery. No, they're not the agent of my misery. By making them, in my own mind, the agent of my misery, I'm becoming a slave to them. But by realizing that no, this is my own karma, release them from the responsibility and take responsibility myself. Then I become free. Then I become free in the midst of my good and bad experiences. I'll tell you one last thing, because it's a good story from a Buddhist perspective. Things like this we have to convert to use in a Hindu context, but it's a beautiful story from a Buddhist perspective. You know, the Buddhist idea of no self, that the self doesn't exist. And so that's basic to Buddhism. Hinduism starts by saying that the self is the reality. Find out who you are, and then you know the secret of the universe. Buddhism starts by saying that the self is the source of all problems. It doesn't exist, so just know that you don't exist, and then there are no problems. So there's a Buddhist monk, a modern Buddhist monk, who says that he used to belong to a monastery in Thailand, where they would go out on little rowboats out onto a lake, a large lake, to meditate. In the early hours of the morning, they would go out because it was quiet there, and then just the image of the quiet, still lake, like the still lake of the mind, it was a very good place for meditation. And so he said that sometimes fishermen were also fishing on the boat, and so sometimes a fisherman would be busy with fishing, and their boat would knock into your boat, and it would disturb your meditation. And so that was just something that once in a while it would happen, and you'd have to put up with it. And so one day he's meditating in his boat, and he feels a boat hit his boat. And he thinks, oh, that damn fisherman, and not being careful, disturbing my meditation. Okay, now let me get back to my meditation. After a few minutes, again it hits. My God, is that the same fisherman that's so careless? And after a little bit, again the boat hits. About the fifth time that the boat hits, he's ready to turn around and curse the fisherman out. And he looks and sees that it's an empty boat. It's just an empty boat. Once it was an empty boat, then who is he to blame? There's no one to blame. It's just an empty boat. There's no intentionality behind it. But then he thought that if Buddhism is true, that there is no self, then there's no real intentionality behind anything. It's just a collection of tendencies. And so when somebody insults me, it's the same as an empty boat. There's no person there. There's no person there. It's just an empty boat. And so then he had an image to hold whenever anybody did something that would normally have bothered him. He just thought, empty boat, empty boat. There's no one there. So that's from a Buddhist perspective, but the same thing, and I won't take more time. I'll leave it to you as your problem to apply it within a Hindu context, a Vedantic context. But in that way we see that no, let me not be a victim of other people. The things that happen to me happen because of myself. I have set everything into motion. The world is my mirror. And so let me take agency. And let me bear and forbear and forgive, because I am the source of that which happens to me. So I'll stop there. Now time is up for question and answer. So let me give a closing chant so that we can complete the video, and then I'll give the announcements. Om madhuvatharitayate madhuksharanti sindhavaha madhvirna santhoshadhihi madhunaktamutoshasi madhumatparthivagum rajaha madhudyarastu nah pita madhumando vanaspatir madhumagum astu suryaha madhvirgavo bhavanduraha. Om madhu, om madhu, om madhu. For us who seek the truth, and for all living beings, may the winds blow sweetly. May the herbs yield us sweetness. May the sun shed its sweetness upon us. Sweet be the night and the break of day. Sweet be the very dust of the earth. May the heavens pour down sweetness upon us. May the trees, lords of the forest, bear us sweetness. May the sun shed its sweetness upon us. May all the directions pour forth sweetness. Oh, sweetness, sweetness, sweetness. So for announcements,